John. Good afternoon, everybody. John said I was supposed to distinguish the facts from the fake facts. So I think you've actually heard the facts, trust me. But I'll add a few more. And I'll want to come at it from a slightly different perspective, not just from the standpoint of the university looking out at its impact on the economy of the state and the regions in the state, but also as the business community might look at the university and the role of the university and of public higher education in general. So to some extent, we're talking here about CSU and community colleges too. And my basic thesis would be that there have been historically, in a really simplified way, two traditional metrics for how you evaluate the impact of higher education, producing educated citizens and research. But I think now, especially in the last 5 years or more, we're looking at a new third metric, which is direct economic contribution to the economy of the state and the regions where the campuses are located. And the contribution has always been there, but it's been indirect. And now I think the spotlight is on the university to show the direct impact and to quantify that impact. And you see it in Sacramento, you see it in a lot of different ways. But I think we need to see this third metric of evaluating the effectiveness of a public university. And I think we could take it back to the master plan, 1960. And I just want to touch on 2 points. One is the role of the university in generating a competitive workforce, because when the business community looks at this, they say, we need a workforce with the skills we need to deliver what we want to deliver, both goods and services. And there's been a world of change since 1960. And so where are these workers coming from? Who are we trying to train? So back in 1960, and sorry, I gotta look at notes because I can't even remember my own phone number, much less a password, so I have to look at numbers here. Back in 1960, only 11% of workers of jobs in California were filled by workers with a master's degree. So today it's about 1/3. That's a big change. 10-year projections consistently point to a growing gap between the number of college-educated workers who are available in California and the jobs they're going to be asked to fill. So the second gap is demographic. And this really has to do with the changing makeup of our communities across the state. So in 1960, 82% of high school graduates in the state were non-Hispanic whites. Today, it's under 28%. Latinos then made up only 11% of high school graduates. Today, it's more than half. This is a big, big change. This is a community with different needs. It's actually the same needs, but there are different requirements to engage them and give them access. There's also been another change in the degree-seeking population, maybe less in UC than in the CSUs, but there are more and more Californians who are employed while they are going to school. They're supporting a family, very likely. They may have 1 or 2 jobs. They may be coming to the campus whenever they can. They may be doing it full-time or part-time. And a lot of these people also, who are not actually seeking immediate degrees, they may be looking to upgrade their skills because they may be going in the course of their careers to multiple jobs. And they're continually upgrading skills. So this is a different or an additional target audience than the typical classical 18 to 24-year-old undergrad who would come to a campus for 4 years. So I think we need to keep that in focus. So the issue of access is really, really important, and how UC as well as CSUs and community colleges address the changing needs around access is going to be really fundamental to the university's ability to deliver the workforce that the business community and, frankly, legislators and others expect. And needless to say, what was being said earlier this morning, the defunding of the university across the board in the last 10 or 12 years has immensely hobbled its capacity to deliver at that level. The other thing I really want to focus on, though, is startups. And not that education is all about startups, but this is one of those metrics by which universities are being evaluated, where UC has really stepped in an important way. So here we're talking about new entrepreneur-led businesses that have been created by individuals associated with the university. They could be faculty, they could be undergrads, they could be graduate students, they could be postdocs, they could be staff. But what we know is that the universities are important catalysts for economic development in their communities because they are generating growing numbers of entrepreneurs and entrepreneur-led startups who overwhelmingly start and keep their companies in California and overwhelmingly tend to found and run their companies in relatively close proximity to the campus where they were located. And that means also that each campus, if we look at the 10 UC campuses, and to a degree the federal labs it runs as well, they tend to mirror the characteristics of their communities. So what you're seeing as an economic development role for UC Merced is quite different because there are certain needs in the Central Valley, quite different from what you see at Berkeley, which is embedded in the innovation economy of the Bay Area, or what you see at UCSD, which is embedded and actually created a lot of the biotech and tech economy in San Diego. So each campus has its own characteristics. So we quantified this. We did a study for the president a few months ago. We used a lot of data that Martin generated, and so that's part of the base for this. And what we found was, looking at just companies that have been founded by faculty, undergrads, graduate students, or staff, since 1968, more than 1,200 companies being generated, of which more than half are still active, which is pretty good if you look back that far. Vast majority headquartered in California. They had an aggregated annual revenue of over $16 billion. They had attracted about $16 billion in venture investment, of which about $10 billion was for companies that were still active, which is pretty good. They cover a wide range of sectors. The biggest number is actually in medical therapeutics, followed by software, research tools, electronics, medical devices, diagnostics, a lot of other things. But you can see very heavy life sciences focus, medical, biotech, and tech. What's interesting, I think, is 98% of those companies were founded after 1980, 75% since 2000. So this is really a trend, a strong trend in the last 10 to 12 years. Our best estimate is for those 600 plus companies that are active today. They directly support about 38,000 jobs in the state, about 150,000 jobs indirectly. They contribute about $20 billion annually to the California economy, pay about $90 billion in local taxes. So those numbers are really, really, really conservative because we really were very selective about what companies we were going to count. We wanted to take people who had only founded a company within 1 year of leaving the campus. If they'd been gone 2 or 3 years ago, they might have founded Apple, but we didn't count them because you couldn't say there was a clear, undeniable connection. So these are people who pretty much went from the campus, founded companies. Most of them are using UC-generated IP. Not all of them, but most of them are. And many of them, though not all, are benefiting from initiatives on the different campuses. Every campus has its own variations, but there's basically 4 big categories of activity, initiatives. There's business plan competitions, there's incubators and accelerators, there's direct investment, and there's entrepreneurial training. So you can vary that in any way you want, but all the campuses are doing that, but doing it in ways that are tailored to their communities, with the idea of supporting and generating businesses in proximity to the community. And another angle on this is that private companies, we see this a lot in Mission Bay, but we see it all around California, are locating their research facilities and their incubators and their accelerators to be as close as they can to the campuses, where they can have access to the research scientists, to the graduate students, to the technology coming off the campus. So these kind of affiliated entities in the satellite role around the campus are part of this larger economic development impact. And I should say most of these programs, these to support entrepreneurs, are less than 4 years old. Some, like UCSD Connect, they go back to the 1980s, and that was really pioneering. Some are 5 or 6 or 8 years old, but most are under 4 years old. So this is a pretty new thing institutionally for UC to step into, but there's a real strong commitment from the president's office and all the campuses to do this. So I guess what I'd say, just to kind of wrap this up, is that you could take a traditional view and say, well, this kind of activity really is a distraction from the core mission of the university, the academic mission. I think there's another way of looking at it, which is the necessary way today, which is that without distracting from its core academic and research mission, which obviously remains at the core, community engagement needs to be part of the 21st century mission of a public university, including public research universities. It needs to be woven into the mission. And so this is an opportunity for the state, but even more an opportunity for the economies where the campuses are located. So I think in this respect, the university's support for entrepreneurs and startups on a system-wide basis and on a campus basis really shouldn't be seen as competitive or as a shift away from traditional academics and research, but really as a more important way now to amplify them and amplify their impact. Thanks.